He was one of the best sackers in the league last year. He's one of the top pass rushing players in the league. That, to me, is what dictates a splash, and that's why I called Hasson Reddick a splash sign.
That's the kind of stuff he's talking about with Zach Pascal. But he knows he's not Calvin Ridley. He knows he's not even Christian Kirk. He knows, and how he knows, the Eagles got to get better than that.
Johnny Mac and Jody Mac here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. What are we asking our streamers to
do?
You
got to like, you got to share, you got to subscribe, people. Come on. You love us.
Give us a solid support nod here on Birds 365. All right, one more quarterback point, then I do want to flip it over to wide receiver and the fact that others are coming off the board. The Eagles didn't get a wide receiver yesterday. We'll see if they get one today. The pickings, I don't want to call them slim, but are reducing a little bit. But before we go, talking about quarterbacks being able to dictate terms and the like, it was funny that I didn't even go to the no trade clause guys when I was making the point about Brady, because someone tweeted at me or whatever, called the show. I don't even remember which one it was. Jody, don't be talking about Tom Brady has to honor his obligation of the year he has left on the Buccaneers contract. The NFL is a one-way contract league. They'll cut you as soon as they don't need you. Yeah, those are the rules. And if you don't like them, change them. To Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson's credit, with the no trade clauses, they're going about changing it. If you don't like the rules, they do have free agency. When you get there, take a stand. I'm not signing unless you give me a note. You want me that bad? I'll certainly give you my services. No trade clause. If you want to take control of your career and the overall league and the situation, stand up and fight the fight over something like that. Those two guys did. And then there's one other guy that I got to give a tip of the hat to. He did it again. The Minnesota Vikings extended Kirk Cousins another year.
Business Hall of Famer.
Another $35 million.
Yeah.
And every penny of it guaranteed. Because that's the other bugaboo about the NFL. It's not guaranteed money. Whenever you get a signing bonus, that's guaranteed. But there's always money under the contract that if you cut a guy, you can just move away from, and it just disappears into thin air. Not if you're Kirk Cousins, because he gets his money guaranteed. So if you are a quarterback in the league and you're they're going to give me this unbelievable contract, which, by the way, Aaron Rodgers is going to fall into that category. He's not going to get all that money. At some point, Aaron Rodgers is going to move on, or the Packers are going to move on from him, and there's going to be money that will just disappear.
Yeah. No, he's not going to get it. He's not going to get all that.
They're putting it out there for $50 million per season for a reason. He's a diva, and he wants to be able to go on the Pat McAfee show and brag about his $50 million, $10 million more per season than any other quarterback in the National Football League. And certain contracts are done that way. So players can take victory laps. Agents can take victory laps.
Yeah, agents. That's what it's about, Jody. They want to take the victory laps. And because remember, where all this information is coming from, for people that don't know, is agents. Teams are not confirming these deals. Agents are confirming these deals. And they want to look good so they can get more clients. And that's why you hear these inflated numbers. And we're talking about Hasson Reddick with Dave earlier. And look, when it comes out, when the actual intricacies of the contract come out, it will look even better for the Eagles. You know, one of the reasons you and Dave said splash, one of the reasons I didn't say splash is because of the contract. I mean, to me, it's all about the definition, right? You had different definitions. To me, that contract is so cost effective at that position. Well, that's why the Eagles did it. I think it's a good signing. I think all that. But that's not my definition. My definition is Christian Kirk, splash, 70, overpaid, blah, blah. The Eagles got a deal, if anything. So give Howie Roseman credit, as usual, for that part of his job. But all these things are overblown and overstated. And then when you get the real numbers, It's 99.9% of the time it's better from the team's perspective than it was advertised as, if that makes sense.
Right, because the agents are the ones who always put it
Yeah.
out there to begin with. You're 100% right on that. And yes, I judge splash by a player being procured as per the rankings prior to the start of free agency. That to me makes a splash. My view of things as a fan, I would look at, man, we got one of the top 4 edge rushers. We got one of the top 20 ranked free agents before free agency started. Yeah, that's a splash. Hey, if Howie Roseman does a great job and gets a guy for market value, maybe even slightly below market value for that ranking, I'm not going to say, oh, that's not a splash because Howie got him cheap. I don't care about cheap. I'm good with cheap. I'd like to see more cheap if I'm an Eagle fan. I'm more worried about where does he rank in either some accepted media outlets' ability to judge players and or statistics. He was one of the best sackers in the league last year. He's one of the top pass rushing players in the league. That to me is what dictates a splash, and that's why I called Hasson Reddick a splash signing.
Yeah, it's just definition. But I'll go back to Andrew Brandt, our buddy. We got to get Andrew on the show. We haven't
We'll
had
do
him
for
for
an
a
Andrew
while.
Brandt appearance.
But
Right.
he tweeted out annual. Remember, this is a guy who was a Packers president for years and even worked here in Philadelphia for
Eagles, yeah.
a while. And annual reminder contract information is virtually always, I would correct him, always take out the virtually, coming from the agents, presenting contracts in best possible light. Of course, they are not what they appear to be. Still amazed how many people believe these numbers. It's not the people's fault. It's not even our fault or Adam Schefter's for reporting it. I mean, they're reporting the numbers in the contract, and basically agents are going to spin it to where, every incentive, even if they're not attainable and they're put in there for a reason, you can make up to $75 million. And then you get the real numbers when they file the contract with the union. And that's when the real numbers come out. Again, it's always more team friendly than it looks, even in the case of somebody like Aaron Rodgers, who is getting all this money. But the thing about Kirk Cousins, business Hall of Famer that he is, there's plenty of guaranteed money in the NFL. What Kirk has done is he's bet on himself year after year after year, and he's very durable, and he's been very durable. He's always out there. So, if you're signing 1-year deals, you can get essentially 1-year deals. In the case, he had the biggest guaranteed contract in NFL history. All 3 of that. In fact, I think it's the only one. All 3 years fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
But they're always short term. That was the longest term. It's usually 1 or 2 years. All that money can be guaranteed. But when you get up to the 4 or 5 year range, yeah. And then the funny numbers start to come in.
And that's, to me, a major tip of the cap to Kirk Cousins and his agent. But that also is an example.
Mike McCartney, one of the best Twitter followers, by the way. If you got to follow Mike McCartney, who's an agent in the NFL, because for years, Jody, people mistake him for Mike McCarthy.
Right.
And they just yell at him when the Cowboys are playing poorly. And he'll go on Twitter and say, give me a break or something during the game. And they think he's tweeting they think the coach of the Cowboys is tweeting during the game. It's hilarious. It's hilarious. But that's his agent. And Mike is, Mike deserves a gold star.
As does Cousins, because he went down the franchise tag and didn't rock the boat and didn't try and force the Redskins, at the time they were the Redskins, I could call them the Redskins, hand to get himself traded. No, he just kept playing and putting up solid stats, not off the chart stats, but just stone cold solid stats and staying in there all 16, now 17 games. And yeah, I think with this contract, he officially goes over the $200 million mark in career earnings for a kid that was
Yeah, I
picked in the
mean,
what,
yeah. Look,
fourth round?
the guy's a good quarterback. He really is, and I've always said he's kind of my demarcation line because I don't think you could win with Kirk Cousins at a consistent level. But man, he's really good. Especially, he's tremendously accurate. He can throw the football. There's just something, there's something about him. He's just there's an it factor he doesn't have, and I always put him as the line. He's probably better than your quarterback. If there are 32 teams fan bases chiming in, he's probably better than your quarterback. But he's
Yeah,
not good enough
he's
to
in the
win with.
top half. That's absolutely accurate. He's not in the top 5. He's not in the top 10, but he's in the top half, which means, yeah, he's probably
And
yeah,
and
at least
and
half of the people you're talking to, he's better than your starting quarterback.
and what I always, and this is where that's the cost of doing business. Derek Carr's probably in that category as well. The cost of doing business at that particular position and what the Eagles are facing in a short period of time with Jalen Hurts, because he's also going to be in that category. Different type of quarterback, but similar type of success. We talked about Jalen, where you want to grade him, 17, like NFL.com, blah, blah, blah. Guess what? Cost of doing business, $30 million. That's where it starts. That's where it starts.
All right, I want to go back and reference someone that we talked about earlier in the show. I'm pretty sure it was while Zangara was on. Yesterday I came on and said I wanted a splash move by the Eagles. And there were 2 specific guys that I said would have made me more excited than anybody else. One was Marcus Williams, the safety from the Saints, because the Saints are attempting to get into a position to take on Deshaun Watson. They're already over the salary cap. I need to do massive maneuvering over the next however many days to just get under the cap. And then you tell me they're going to get Deshaun Watson too?
Funny how they can do that, huh?
Yeah. Mickey Loomis is going to have to be a magician to make that happen. So you got no chance of Marcus Williams going back to the Saints. That ship has sailed. And I really thought he'd be a great fit here in Philadelphia.
I think the Jets might get him. Here's
how that would be good for the Eagles if the Jets sign Marcus Williams. I think the Jets are a big-time player for Hamilton, the safety from Notre Dame. They've got the 4th pick. They've got the 10th pick. If they're out of the mix, if they're going to give Marcus Williams top of the market money to be a safety, they're probably not going to use a top 10 pick in the draft to take a safety as well. Even though they're 2 different types of safeties, I just don't think they do that. So if you want to see him end up here in Philadelphia, Hamilton, take the Jets out of the mix, that would be a plus for you. And, oh, by the way, you know how much I like Marcus Williams. So if he ends up in the other green of the Jets, you won't hear Jody McDonald complain about it. So
I'd
that's
rather
a guy.
have Kyle Hamilton, though. I agree with your sentiment. If they sign Marcus Williams, they're not going to draft Kyle Hamilton. I'd rather have Kyle Hamilton. That's a Soapy's choice by Jody Mac.
Yeah, I like them both. I won't be bummed either way. Much like your Sophie choice you continued to describe last year with Devontae Smith. Yes, I was a big Justin Fields fan, but if you get Devontae Smith, you're not going to hear any complaints from me. So the same thing for the Jets and safety. Here's where you'll hear Jody Mac complain. I wanted either Marcus Williams or Hasson Reddick. And sure enough, the Eagles delivered Hasson Reddick several hours after we finished up Birds 365. Here's what I don't want to hear today. Here's what I don't want to come on Birds 365 and talk about tomorrow. Eagles sign Zach Pascal. Thank you, no. I don't.
Well, I'm going to say, Jody, you don't have to worry about that today. That's going to be a second, probably third wave signing. So you're not going to have to worry about that today. You never say never. I mean, they might like the kid so much they give him a 1-year deal. They get it done because he doesn't care. But it's not going to be. I remember this, Jody. The Eagles tried to trade for Calvin Ridley. That's on the record. They offered They made an offer to Christian Kirk. I can't imagine it'll be anywhere near what he ended up getting in Jacksonville. They realize they have to get significantly better. They do realize that. That's evident by their actions so far. In that, they went out and tried to trade for a really good receiver. They made an offer for a good receiver on the free agency market. Didn't work out so far. So you got to go down the list. You're already on plan C. Juju Smith-Schuster, there's been a lot of smoke about that. Now, Jimmy Kempski, our friend, wrote this morning the Eagles are not in on Juju anymore, so I had not heard that. If that's the case, you go farther down. Now, I've also heard Juju's more likely to go to Kansas City, I think was one of the teams. So maybe they saw the landscape. So you never know how something like that shakes out. But my larger point is they realize they have to get significantly better at that position. And if somebody like Zach Pascal comes in, that'll be because they haven't been able to do it in other avenues, which is possible. You're going against 31 other teams. I mean, nobody knew Jacksonville was going to lose their minds and pay Christian Kirk like he's CM Punk. Nobody saw that coming. So I mean, you can't. The last thing you want to do is blow your budget because some other team's acting like a nut job. So I give the Eagles credit for discipline. It's probably not sexy. Fans don't want to hear that, but you don't want to blow up and play. He's a good player, but he's not a great player. Then, you can imagine the troubles you're going to have with Devontae Smith down the road because he's going to be better than Christian Kirk. And he's going to look at Christian Kirk in his own locker room. So they tried to get better. I mean, Ridley's a really good player. And they were on the verge of getting him. So they know they have to get better.
Here's the guy I want to see, and you're right about Zach Pascal. Very highly unlikely happens today. He's one of those guys. There's a natural evolution to free agent signings. The creme de la creme usually get picked off first. Every once in a while, you see a guy slide in there and go, why'd they sign him? They got bigger fish to fry. Yeah. Well, they did because they had a grade on him. They thought he was pretty good. He was willing to sign. They got to sign the deal that they wanted. They didn't have to overpay like a Christian Kirk. So you'll get some of those signings. We had some yesterday, and we'll get more again today. But I hope Zach Pascal is not that guy for the Eagles today, tomorrow, next week, the week after. I just don't. The numbers say, I don't know. I can't even begin to comprehend the way Nick Sirianni talks so glowingly about him as to what he's seeing, and I'm missing because it's not there on the page. The stats just say no.
Well, coaches, he does everything correctly. So, and Nick's a big, he'll go on one of his
Patrick Mahomes doesn't do everything correctly.
No, he doesn't. No.
But guess what? He's the best quarterback in football. So I don't need to have a guy who does everything correctly.
I told you.
Tell me about the guys who put up points after points after points after points on offense.
I tell you all the time, I got freezing cold take for saying Patrick Mahomes had poor mechanics coming out of college. To this day, I tell the guy, okay, yeah. What did I say wrong? He's still got poor mechanics. Doesn't matter.
He makes it matter. I don't care about mechanics. I care about results.
But I also, from a coach's perspective, if you do have a guy who lines up correctly and runs routes correctly, and you put him on the teaching tape, as Dave said, and you said, this is the way to do it. This is the way. And then you impart that knowledge to a player with significant talent. That's when somebody really explodes and becomes a superstar. And, Devontae Smith has a chance to be that because he's such an advanced route runner for a young player. Still got a way to go. Devontae will tell you that sometimes he doesn't run routes at the right depth or, He's not exactly where he's supposed to be, and that stuff matters at the NFL level. And that's where Nick points out the coaching tape, and he made a big thing. You remember the Giants game with the 2 drops. You remember Nick made a big deal about people went nuts because Devontae Smith was open. And Nick went through this exhaustive detail of Quez Watkins and Devontae Smith both ran poor routes on that particular where they're both supposed to be crossing. And he just broke it down. I've never seen in the modern era, I've never seen a coach break something down so definitively and say, you know, they're in the wrong spots, the wrong depth, and it screwed everything up. And that's the kind of stuff he's talking about with Zach Pascal. But he knows he's not Calvin Ridley. He knows he's not even Christian Kirk. He knows, and how he knows the Eagles got to get better than that.
I'll give you the guy I want. And up until yesterday, he wasn't available. Now all of a sudden he is available. And that's, I'm circling back in my own mind to why the hell is Deshaun Watson meeting with the Cleveland Browns? The Browns got cap strapped. They decided to put their faith in someone who was playing on another team last year rather than their own guy. They're moving on from Jarvis Landry, who I get is a 30-year-old wide receiver. And usually you start to see drop off in that 28, 29 region. He's now in the 30. I still think he's a baller. I always have. At 100-year catch year, you just don't do that unless you've got talent and skills. Last year was the first year that he's ever been hurt in his career. He's played 15 or 16 games every year for the first 7 years of his career. 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 16 games, 15. Oh, he missed one in 2020, and this past year he only played 12 out of 17. So his numbers are off. Why? Because he missed games. And yeah, you get a little scared about a guy who plays at age 29. That's what he played at last year, and for the first time misses games. He's a risk that I'm willing to take because he's a big play player. What the Eagles need is a big play player. If you believe Devontae is going to become that, having 2 of them would be phenomenal if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. I know that one of the reasons I was singing the praises of Hasson Reddick yesterday instead of a guy like Daniel Jones was because of youth. All right, well, you got youth with a splash on defense. How about taking a guy who's already put in a resume together on offense? I think Jarvis Landry would be a really good fit with the Eagles. I got anything shot here, J Mac?
I don't think. I think number one, from a football perspective, I think you're right. I mean, I think that's a good player. That's a proven player. You know, can play in the slot, and as you met, and we talked about with Dave earlier as well, you know, Quez Watkins is probably best suited outside because of his speed. So that would better fit sort of what you need. Slot receiver, and then you can have Devontae, and he can move guys around. But I'm just talking the majority of the time, especially in key third down situations. I think he'd be a perfect fit from a football perspective. But then you got to get into the money. You got to get into the age, which the Eagles don't like. Obviously, they try to get younger players. And also, when you're on free agency, and the brilliance of the Calvin Ridley trade was that it's a trade. You're trading for a player. He's coming in. You got to battle with the other teams. I've talked about it at the wide receiver position for a long time now. When we were talking about Mike Williams. Why would Mike Williams want to come to Philadelphia right now with the offense they run? Why would Jarvis Landry, a high volume guy used to catching a ton of footballs, come to Philadelphia right now with the offense they run if he has other options? And I don't know. I haven't heard, and I'll try to check who Jarvis is talking to because it's, you know, everything's so fluid.
He just we didn't know that he was going to be released,
and
so
it just got released. So, you know, is there a high volume passing team looking at him, wanting to bring him in? Well, he's probably going to like that situation better. You know, the Eagles might then come in and say, we're going to overpay. You know, you couldn't overpay for Christian Kirk. Jacksonville didn't make that popular, possible. So I like the player. Good player would be a significant upgrade. And I still think he's still got as much football as he played. I don't even think he's 30 yet. I think he's turning 30 this year. And he's played a ton of football. Yeah, I mean, but I don't know. It's going to be tough to convince somebody like that to come here right now because of the offense the Eagles are playing.
Yeah, they're going to have to do some salesmanship with these guys. That listen, last year we ran the ball because we had to run the ball. If we get Jarvis Landry, we'll be a little bit more liberal at throwing the football. You will be the guy who will help us expand our play calling to include a little bit more throwing of the football. Do you think Howie Roseman can sell like that? Do you think that Nick Sirianni can sell like that if he gets on the phone with a kid and make him believe, oh, no, we're going to throw the football more next year because of you, and that's why we want you here in Philadelphia? A little ego stroking, maybe get a deal done with a guy like
I'll tell you what'll get the deal done. More money than the other team, and the Eagles aren't
Now,
willing
wait
to
a minute.
overpay.
You just told me it's about everything else, but it's
No,
climate. It's your
no.
wife is from the East Coast. It's
no, well,
no
I'm saying,
taxes.
and
in,
by the way,
state
you
taxes.
know, Jarvis, I believe, and he's an LSU guy, so I think he's from Louisiana. He might be from Florida, but he's a Southern guy. And he's always been a Southern.
Playing in Cleveland the last 4 years. So if you can put up with Cleveland, you can certainly put up with Philadelphia.
No, but the point is, Jody, if you have an option, then that other stuff comes in. Now, how do you overcome that other stuff? Pay more money. That's what I'm saying. You could overcome the other stuff by paying more money, but that's not the Eagles' MO, nor should it be. Jacksonville. I guarantee you, Christian Kirk wasn't going, oh, let me go to Jacksonville. Even with the
nice
state
in
taxes.
Jacksonville. The weather's nice down there. No state tax.
Yes.
And the Tampa had to overpay, Jacksonville had to overpay by that much.
But it's a crappy organization. Everybody knows that they have a bad reputation. Again, not everything is fluid. They're not standard. Everything is fluid with each individual player and then each individual organization. Where Jacksonville is in their sort of stage of their franchise life is they got to overpay people to get there because they're looked at as a disaster right now. The Eagles are very disciplined, for better or not. People call them cheap. They're not cheap. They pay for players they want, but they're very, very disciplined. That's all I'm trying to say.
No, I hope they drop their discipline a little and get Jarvis Landry in here. That's the big deal I want to be able to talk about here tomorrow on Birds 360.
You might go 2 for 2, Jody. They need a receiver, and they're getting plucked off the boards.
He is John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonough. We're going to come back, put a bow on the show.